so it's a little easier. Okay, well, here we are. Happy Tuesday. Welcome
Happy
to
Tuesday.
the Cosmogenia podcast, our Mother's Milk, Mother's Wisdom. I think Mother's Womb, Mother's Milk series. This is part 3 of 4. And so I'm your hostess, Dia, and I'm here with my awesome special guests, Lauri and Lumby of the Soul School. And today, May 30th, our topic is matriarchy. Like one of my favorite topics of the world, in the world, because especially in academic circles, um, there's a lot of misunderstanding around that concept, um, particularly in academia, and not enough comprehension, I think, in the general space, general
Mhm.
populist space. And while I support people's personal exploration and process of understanding their experience of a phenomena or a concept, I also think it's very important for people to know the origins,
Mhm.
right? Because in traditional and indigenous worldviews, it's your origins that provide the foundation for behavior, for way of being, your beliefs, rituals, traditions, how the world works, and your place in it. So if we're talking about matriarchy, yes, it's an English word made up of Greek and Latin words. It's a Latin-based term and word. However, its concept is as old as humanity itself, and it's rooted in our mothers and the ways female-centered, mother-centered societies operated before patriarchy and before the concept of the West even emerged. So that's our conversation today. Really, we're going to be talking about our personal understanding and experiences of it, while also sharing the work of Dr. Heidi. Gosh, I'm going to butcher her last name. Abendroth. I'll just say the very last part. She's a German scholar, known as the mother of modern matriarchal studies, and her work I highly recommend because she does the scholarship. Like, she breaks it down. She has conversed with the scholarship on matriarchy. She's called out, the lack of understanding. She's highlighted why there's a shortcoming here and there, and she's left it open for people to contribute, that feel called to contribute. I'm one of those people. Woohoo. But through a very specific branch. However, I think it's very important because I tried submitting a paper to a peer-reviewed journal that focuses on goddess studies, and one of the reviewers said that they weren't convinced of the archaic definition of matriarchy. And I found that shocking because I was speaking from a very cultural viewpoint, but there are a couple of my ancestries, cultures from within my ancestries still operate on a matriarchal, matrilineal tradition and way of being. And those are the Akans, right? There are some branches that are patrilineal, but that came later. The Akans are mostly in origin matriarchal. So for a PhD to say that they're not convinced that I'm trying to change, I'm trying to change the term that's already been established. And it's like, there's still a lot of work to do. So I threw this in as a topic because it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. So I would like for you, Lauri, to I guess again, because I think last time you started it off, and I want to leave it open for you to start. And we're exploring a bit of Heidi's work. I'm just going to call her Dr.
Mm.
Heidi, on matriarchy, because it is the foremost, more aligned
Mhm.
exploration of it. So if you'd like to start us off, I would appreciate it.
I love this topic. I really appreciated reading Dr. Heidi's paper, and I highly encourage listeners to take the time to read the document that you sent me, because number one, it's based in her theory and understanding, but she provides lived examples in modern
Mm,
time of cultures, two specific cultures that continue to live within that matriarchal mindset paradigm. And, when I look at my own ancestry, and it's my Irish ancestry that I most closely resonate with, I have always felt that matriarchal prevalence. And even in, my immediate, my mom, my grandmother, my aunts, I look at just the way they are and the way they live, and have lived, you can just see that glimpses of that matriarchal paradigm within them. And when I say that, it's kind of like, to put it in Western modern terms, all the women wore the pants in the family,
mhm,
in a sense, and had their own power in a quiet, almost secret way, but one that all of their sisters understood. And so there's something really sacred in that transcends conditioning, really, because it seems to just pierce through that veil of the, I can only say, white American overlay, because that's my own personal experience. And when you first brought up this topic, and you and I have talked a little bit about this, one of the things that really shot up for me was, in my years of searching and exploring my own spirituality, what I believe, what I don't believe, communities I did or didn't want to be a part of,
mhm,
in all of my exploration of something outside of the patriarchal hierarchical norm, I found these communities that claimed to be matriarchal centric, claimed to be goddess centric, if you will, but ultimately were operating out of a hierarchical structure. And to me, it just struck me as so wrong. Like, the communities that I connected with, all they were doing was replacing the old man in the sky god with an old woman in the sky god, and still maintaining all of those hierarchical structures, rigid dogma and doctrine, and all these rules about belonging and ritual. And there was a exclusionary aspect to what they were doing. And it was very power driven, at least in the way that I saw it. So using divine gifts, if you will, for the sake of their own want, not necessarily for the betterment of the world. So those things always really rattled my cage, and which is why I never joined any of those communities. And I didn't really understand why until I came across Rihanna Eisler's work, and specifically her book Chalice and the Blade, which is super old. I mean, I think it was published in the 80s. And, for the first time, I see somebody kind of calling that out and saying, all we've known is this patriarchal paradigm. All scholarship up to that point, at least the scholarship she came upon, was interpreting archaeology and other historical studies through that lens of hierarchy. And so as a result, what was coming forward was this misunderstood matriarchy, which Dr. Heidi illuminates. And that misunderstood matriarchy being that it was exclusively female oriented, exclusively female dominant, and it was goddess, but in a hierarchical kind of way, like in the way that we might interpret Roman or Greek mythology, for example. And she was the first one that I'm aware of to come forward and say, we got it all wrong. Because really what these cultures were doing was that they were matrilinear, matriarchal, matrial centric, and egalitarian. So it wasn't a top-down order, it was collaborative, it was cooperative, it was directed towards peace and harmony with the planet, with each other, with the universe. And really, the language I always use is that a recognition of the sacred diversity in each individual, and that we each have our own unique gifts to bring to the tribe, if you will. And from that true understanding of matriarchy is the seeking out and the looking after what are your unique gifts and how can we as a community support you in accessing, develop, and utilizing those gifts. Number one, for your own fulfillment, and then ultimately for the sake of the betterment of the tribe and collectively betterment of the world. And so I appreciate Riane Eisler's work for reframing matriarchy and saying it's not about a hierarchy, it's not about power and privilege and control, it's about collaboration and cooperation of all peoples. And Dr. Heidi's work really, I guess I would say, takes that a whole nother level. And so I really appreciated that piece. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for bringing in also those that kind of, I guess, started the conversation to put it back on the map for critique, really. What I love about Dr. Heidi's work is that, like you said, she gives examples, real world living examples. And I think the Musuo and the Kasi, the Musuos in China and the Kasi, I believe, are in North India. And what I love about, I love how these podcasts are flowing, because the last time it was the power of names and naming. And I believe the Kasi means the people. It's really interesting because all of these, we really look at the etymologies of these names, it boils down to the people or the children of, right? And when we're looking at matriarchal and matrilineal societies, it's the progenitor ancestress, right? That's the beginning, because matri and archy. And then you have the names, or the names that are passed down, like the daughter of or the child of this progenitor ancestress. And I think it's so very important for people to understand that, matriarchy is not a reflection of, it's not an opposite of patriarchy. That's very dualistic, patriarchal, colonized mind thinking, right? In a matriarchal worldview, relationships, it's relational first and foremost, right? And it overlaps with indigenous worldviews, really. It's relationships are complementary, so things are complementary, they're not opposite right?
Mhm.
Everybody has their part to play, and it's not roles in a sense of it's
Right,
rigid. It's your skill set, your
right.
skill, your gifts. And I like that distinction. Like, what are your gifts and
Mhm.
how can you contribute to the best of your capacity? Because it's not just about the group, it's you as well. There's no group without you. The mothers, I remember I got sassy and, and rude. Beginning of the month. I said my apologies because they were like, you know, that was disrespectful. And, you know, they had said to me, there is no you without us. And there's no
Mhm.
us without you. That's relational right there, right?
Mhm.
It's highlighting a relationship. So for women to not understand that is for women to operate within that box with modifications. Like, so,
Mhm.
so yes, for me, it's like, no, that's okay. That's your understanding of it. How much work have you done? How much undoing have you done? How much do you really know about the origins? Like, you, in order for you to truly claim an authentic matriarchal structure, shouldn't even be
Mhm.
structure. It's like concept.
Mhm.
I want to say cradle, but sanctuary, really, space. You need to go back to the beginning. That's why I'm always
Mhm.
stressing beginnings and origins. Like, go back, because that is what will take you out of the whole patriarchal fetters, patriarchal clause, you know,
Mhm.
conditioning. We all have a degree of that, but for you to make it a mirror image of it, it's just still deeply rooted in you. And I don't like that. You know,
Mhm.
for someone that understand why she's here, and it has a lot to do with rebirthing old stories. It's like, that's not matriarchal. A whole bunch of women together, you know, doing MLMs, convincing or manipulating other women into spending thousands of dollars on a gadget and excluding other women because they can't. It's That's not matriarchy in its spirit. That's
Mhm.
patriarchy dressed up as matriarchy.
Mhm.
It is. And it's not to say you can't be in a flow of abundance. It's to say that in order for you to truly understand that, you really need to do that inner work. And
Mhm.
it's coming to terms with the horrors and the traumas that have been placed upon all peoples, because in a matriarchal worldview, no one is excluded, right? There are spaces you cannot go into because those aren't your gifts, right? It's a matter of
Mhm.
safety. Like, if you look upon mysteries that you're not supposed to look upon, you're going to get hurt. And the mothers know this, right? So, but we come together in communal support.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's one of those things where you're just like, no, that's not it. Yes, you can explore what you feel it is, but at the same time, go a little deeper,
Mhm.
you know, like
Mhm.
really go a little deeper. But then again, it's like, is that my place? Is that really my place?
Mhm.
Yes, no, maybe so. I don't know.
Well, what you're sharing brings forth an inquiry.
Mhm.
And I guess I don't even know if I can say an inquiry. It's an invitation to always be conscious of our colonized thinking
Yes.
and to ask the question, especially as it relates to scholarship, are we looking at this exploration? Are we looking at this research through the lens, through fresh eyes? Are we looking at it through the lens of our conditioning? And the person in the peer review group that questioned the word of matriarchy, and even to presume that the word is done being defined is so patriarchal in and of itself. It's kind of like, someone said this, so therefore it's law. No, we are continually learning and unfolding from our ancient history. We're continuing to rediscover old new things, new to us, original to humanity. We're continuing to discover new things. And we can never say that something is the absolute truth, because understanding and knowledge continues to evolve. And if we're not questioning our colonial thinking, then we're really doing a disservice to scholarship in and of itself, and we're doing a gross disservice to our ancestors, because our ancestors, I don't care who one is, the way back ancestors, somewhere along the line, were not colonizers. So we've all been colonized.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to take a look at that piece. And the other thing that comes through for me is the critical nature of our intuition. Because when we're aware of ourselves, when we're paying attention to those inner impulses, those tickles behind the left ear, the hair standing up on the back of the neck, the sinking sensation in our gut, when we're paying attention to those things, they guide us. And so they support us by alerting us to when something is incorrect or inaccurate. Like Rianne Eisler, something struck her in her research that went, wait a minute, like, why are we assuming that former matriarchies were a top-down hierarchical leadership? And from her perspective, the research did not bear that out. Instead, it bore out this collective, cooperative, harmonious, peaceful, egalitarian kind of culture. So yeah, those things are all really, to me, they're just absolutely necessary in the field of scholarship. And this is a whole other aside. There's way too much patriarchy and hierarchy in scholarship, and I'll just leave that there.
Yes. And I thought the whole point of getting into scholarship is to have this ongoing conversation.
No, it should be, but
Yeah.
that wasn't my experience of it.
No, I understand that, but to comment on the reviewer that just wasn't convinced, it's like, well, there's this ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And the point that should be scholarship is that you're contributing to this field of knowledge. You're identifying what's missing. Would have been helpful.
You're exploring it through a new lens.
Exactly.
It's
not perpetuating more of the same, which is what scholarship is today. Should not be, but that's what it is. And it's a clear mirror of patriarchy.
Oh yeah.
Perpetuates me. I need to survive. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And not enough people are awake to it, or enough people are awake to it and they're just complacent or afraid.
Mm-hmm. Or they're benefiting from it.
Well, exactly. I was about to say, afraid to say anything because they don't want to lose the benefits that they have. That false sense of power. It's like half of my rights are gone, but at least if I can hang on to the other half in these sheep's clothing, I'm still going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Much, at the expense of everyone else. Like, it doesn't matter. And it's like, no, it does matter. It has energetic repercussions. And that's the thing, that's one of the hallmarks of matriarchy. It's relational, it's
Yes.
reciprocal, relational reciprocity. It's like what you do energetically has an effect on not just your now, but the past and the future,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what will happen, when you pass on and you come back, that it has that effect. Like, it's deeply
Mm-hmm.
spiritual. And that's what I love about Dr. Heidi's work. Like, it's deeply spiritual. It's spirit
Mm-hmm.
first. Like, it's rooted in spirit. All aspects of society, is rooted in spirit. All aspects of life. Life is sacred. And that's what I was taught. That's how I was taught. Like, the dreams that I had, like the great mother would come down with, smaller mothers, and I would say these smaller mothers would be deified ancestors. They would come down and just teach, like,
Mm-hmm.
all of life is sacred. You have to understand that if you're going to be the head of the lineage. And it's like, well, what does that mean? And it's living it to really understand, okay, now I see what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I going into ceremony and just learning more, remembering more, it's like the aspect of matriarchy that I'll be speaking about, that I am speaking about, what, the origins, how it
Mm-hmm.
first emerged. I remember being shown how matriarchy started, and I love their way of storytelling, because it's almost like the way Genesis starts in the beginning.
Right.
I kid you not. And so it's in the beginning, and then there's just these images and that I'm experiencing,
Mm.
and then at the end they'll say, and that's how it started, or that's how it was created, or and this is how matriarchy began. And I'm like, y'all are funny. And I say I say that because it's like there's this big presence that's educating me. It's like, this is how it emerged. First I came into being, as self-created, and then I created my progeny parthenogenetically, and I taught them how to do it parthenogenetically, and it was just them, and then they taught their daughters, and then when we reached
Mm.
a when a fullness, that's when we created men. That's when we created the
Mm.
male form, right? And that's how matriarchy began. And it was like, oh wow, so that's my understanding of it,
Mhm.
and it's a beautiful way for them to share it. In the beginning, blah 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 blah, and that's how it was, and that's how it's created.
And it
It's
was
also
good.
but it's also disheartening to not see that,
Mm. Mhm.
you know to not hear that in women's lived experiences.
Mm.
And it's like, it's appreciative and necessary for women to talk about their unfolding
Mm.
and to feel liberated in that. Self-liberation, self-determination absolutely is a part of the process,
Mhm.
but it's not the pinnacle, it's not the end all.
Mhm.
Because if you haven't gone to the very beginning, then you've only done a fraction or a quarter or a drop of the work. There's so much more. Yes, you have to look at your privilege. Yeah, of course, I grew up with privilege. I look at that constantly. I'm
Mhm.
always being really mindful of it, even within my own family. Having
Mhm.
knowledge is privilege.
Mhm.
Having the means to access that's privilege,
Mhm.
right? No matter how you look, but is being aware of that, what you do with it, how you honor it, is a necessity. You know,
Mhm.
who has access to it, who doesn't? Are you honoring that process? Are you aware of that? Are you aware of how you look and how patriarchy has defined that?
Mm.
Are you including that in your conversations? Are you letting those in your community become aware that you need to know how to handle yourself in these conversations? And if you're not having those conversations, you're not doing the work. You're not doing the work. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
you're,
Mhm.
you're just not, it's half-assery, excuse my language, at its finest. And the mothers don't have room. The mothers don't give space for that. They don't give
Mhm.
space for half-assing anything. It's, you know, just be more of pulling the rug underneath your feet, or the more complacent and comfortable you become in your undoing, the easier it is for patriarchy to slip right back in
Mhm.
disguise. You know, and then that's when you come into conflict with women that are actually doing the work.
Mhm.
So it's just one of those things where you're just like, where will this cycle end? And to the point of, let me just focus on what I need to stay in my lane, right?
Yeah. Yes. I have to remind myself of that frequently.
Let me just stay in my
Yeah.
lane, because I don't believe I came here to get into every single battle. It's
No.
just fight the ones that come into the lane or that pop up in the lane, you know?
Mhm.
The paper mentioned, I'll have that accessible, you know, I'll provide the link in the YouTube description. And for those that would be listening on Spotify, um, where they can get it as well, if they look in the description, because I believe it's not behind. I don't think it's behind a paywall.
Mm.
She's pretty decent about having these resources accessible.
Mhm.
Her books are an investment, I will say that, but it's worth it. It's really worth it. It is. Knowledge does come at a price. I'm
Mhm.
not saying you should spend $350 on a book. I have done that. I have, you know, it's the type of book where you'll find in the Cambridge Library. You're not going to find anywhere else. One of those, you know, books that's
Mhm.
out of print. It's someone's dissertation, that you can't even access their dissertation, right? So
Mhm.
again, me putting my privilege out front and center. But for those that are interested in reading this paper, I will work to have it available. Also, I want to share um, the highlight of understanding the term matriarchy
Mm.
directly from her paper. I think this is on page 5, and it's under the section, the term matriarchy and its definition.
Mhm.
Um, and I love the statement. She says reclaiming, because that's exactly what it is.
Mm.
Reclaiming this term means to reclaim knowledge of. Reclaiming this term means to reclaim knowledge of societies created socially, economically, and politically and culturally by women. Matriarchal societies are not mirror images of patriarchal ones and do not substitute dominating women for patriarchies dominating men. These societies have never needed patriarchy's hierarchical structures.
Mm.
To better understand the word matriarchy, we must examine its linguistic background. The Greek word archi means both domination and, in the older sense of the word, beginning. These meanings cannot be conflated. One would not translate archetype, primordial type, as dominator type, nor understand archaeology, knowledge of the earliest cultures, as teaching of domination.
Mm.
Think about that for a moment, right? It's like selective listening, right?
Yeah.
Selective hearing. Like, oh no, I'm going to apply domination just to this, but I'm not going to apply it to that because it doesn't make sense there. Well, why would it make
Mm.
sense here? And that's her argument. Based on the earlier meaning of archy, matriarchy means the mothers from the beginning.
Mm.
This refers to the biological fact that mothers, in giving birth, engender life and point to the fact that they are creators of culture itself. This unique societal form has been described as matrilineal, matrifocal, matristic, or gylanic. Rather than elaborate a clear definition of what matriarchal means, Scholars look for substitute concepts, but these were weak, inadequate, and arbitrary. And this is true.
Mhm.
Africa is what we now call Africa. That beautiful landmass, okay, is where you can study mothers from the beginning. And there are societies there that are still matriarchal and matrilineal. Look
Mhm.
at their origin stories, matriarchal, mothers from the beginning. Like the Akans are a great example. The Akan comes from the word Akanfa, which means the people. Akasi,
Mhm.
India, the people. Hello, right? And they're some of the earliest stories of the Akans talks about the old woman, because that's their progenitor
Mm.
ancestress. And that's where the 7 daughters came from. So, yes, mothers from the beginning, matriarchal and matrilineal. You can't have matrilineal without having matriarchy, a beginning, a mother from the beginning.
Mhm.
It's so very important. When we look at words, if we're only going to be selective with how we look at etymology, yet argue, oh no, but matriarchy is a reflection of patriarchy. No, it's not.
Right.
Right? How can you come up with that? Like where's your cultural sensitivity and understanding of older cultures that
Mhm.
have a mother origin?
Mhm.
And you're supposed to be a scholar. Like, come on. Any thoughts, Laurie? Any thoughts?
But they have tenure. I know, I know. Yes, do you have the paper in front of you? Because otherwise I'll pull mine up, because there was a quote in there that really hit me between the eyes, and um, it gave a concrete description of what then patriarchy, or I'm sorry, what then a matriarchal culture looks like and how they function and operate. And it's in the abstract. And I know it said something about gender egalitarian and then blah, 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 blah. Are you able to locate that easily?
Yeah, it's right here in front of me.
Yeah. Can you read that?
So she says matriarchies will be shown to be gender egalitarian and consensus-based societies, actively promoting peace and sustainability by various well-conceived guidelines. And then she gives a brief description of 2 of those societies, the Khasi of northeastern India and the Muso of southwestern China.
Yeah. That to me took theory and put it into practice.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is what it is. And living at the place where we are at this strange juncture of human evolution, looking at, to me, that's what we are striving to return to. That's what we're being invited to return to. And so it brings forth that question of, okay, so this is how it was in industrial cultures, pre-colonialized cultures. This is how it's currently being lived out in these 2 cultures, specifically from that article, the one that you mentioned in Africa, and I know Rianne Eisler mentioned several in South America. Communities that haven't been overtaken by colonialism and have continued to live within that matriarchal structure. So then it brings forth the opportunity to vision. How can we create this in a post-industrial world? How can we create this in, I'm going to say, a post-capitalistic world? Because I believe that is where we're going. And to me, it gives me hope, because it's been done, it's being done, it can be done again. And then it's our job to put that vision out there and say, look this has been done, it's being done, we can do this again. And to gather visionaries, prophets, dreamers, and come together in that collaborative conversation of how do we reclaim this? How do we remember this? How do we re-embody this? And, to me, it's the only thing that makes sense, that kind of gender egalitarian, collaborative, peace-directed culture. It's the only thing that makes sense, because it's the only thing that honors the sacredness of every single human being and supports that honoring. Where, you and I were talking earlier about all the places where human beings are not treated as sacred, how unique maladies, for example, are people that experience different physical, physiological, emotional, mental things that are outside of the norm in the context of colonial society. A gender egalitarian, collaborative, cooperative society says it's our job to create space in which every individual can thrive. And how do we do that? And it can't be done in a hierarchical, patriarchal culture.
Exactly. And I appreciate you bringing in the dreamers, the oracles, the prophets,
Yeah,
to include the men as well, because
of course.
men are children of the mother.
Mhm.
That's what makes it egalitarian, gender egalitarian.
Yeah.
Everybody comes from a womb. Everyone is birthed through their mother. That's what originally being a mother was, to communicate with ancestral beings or
Mhm.
divine beings. Who's coming through to help build the space, to
Mhm.
help create something like, and what is it that you're creating?
Mhm.
So that was what the mother was originally, and at the very beginning though, right?
Yeah.
And then there was a option of, you could do the same, or you could birth skills, you can birth gifts that would help cultivate that space, that will
Mhm.
help cultivate that energy, right?
Mhm.
So the daughter could just be the artist, and in her art she's anchoring energy, she's communing with specific energetic beings, and that's
Mhm.
their relationship. She
Yeah.
doesn't have to birth a human being.
Mhm.
The male child was actually the hidden action of the mother, right?
Mhm.
So, excuse me, he utilized his gifts to support the realm, to
Mhm.
support the energetic space, be it as a protector, as
Mhm.
someone who created gifts as well, his connection to spirit beings to help anchor that energy.
Mhm.
That's the equalness right there,
Mhm.
and for those that, with regards to, there wasn't a gender thing.
Right.
There was no, you're a female, you have to do this. No, it's, you came down as, and your name defined what you did,
Mm.
right? You came down as such and such, go do your work.
Yeah.
You came down as such and such, go do your work. You
Mhm.
came down to be an elder, so we're going to teach you how to do that. We're going to help
Mhm.
support and nurture your connection, so that when you reach that particular age, you were placed
Mhm.
on a pedestal, not as in you're better than, but you will be bringing in more knowledge or specific
Mhm.
types of things that you have to be set in this way.
Mhm.
But it wasn't because you're better than or greater than. It was because that's what you came in as, and we have to honor that.
Mhm.
Um, so it's something that I want people to become more aware of. You know,
Mhm.
as I go through my degree program, things are shifting. Being in education, I love it because education, it's sharing knowledge,
Mhm.
it's sharing processes. Um, and while my topic is still the arching the transmission of ancestral memory with a focus on re-emerging um matriarchal mother goddess tradition, really,
Mhm.
um it's becoming more and more refined. Like, I've gotten involved in birth work,
Mhm.
birth work training, and each Saturday that I do it, because it's every other Saturday, I'm opened up more.
Mm.
And the mothers, they're like, you're rebirthing our stories, you're rebirthing our awareness, into other people's consciousness. And um I started reading, midwifery, going, reading
Mhm.
texts about midwifery, and becoming aware of how much power have been taken from women.
Mhm.
Women don't even have the autonomy to give birth the way they originally did. Like, they don't have the power to honor the sacredness in their birth. Obstetrics, I think that's the word. Completely removed that. Completely has completely taken that from them. And
Mhm.
when I started reading about that, I cried. Like, I sat
Mhm.
there reading the text, I just started crying, and I said, this is the most sacred act, bringing in a life, it bridging two worlds in that moment. That moment the child is passing through the birth canal is the moment the woman is connecting two worlds, heaven and
Mhm.
earth, like spirit realm and the manifest realm. That is the most powerful act a woman can
Mhm.
embody, and she doesn't even have the power to be embodied in that. And
Mhm.
it's when, like, that's I'm becoming so aware of, like really my awareness is like really opening to that, and I'm just like, oh my goodness,
Mhm.
I'm not even like, I wasn't even aware of that. So for me to begin speaking about wanting to help women rebirth themselves, it's me also becoming aware of, well, they need to get back in touch with that power first in
Mhm.
order for them to really stand in that space of birthing itself, the
Mhm.
concept of birthing. um and it made me cry, because I'm just like, patriarchy done that screwed up a lot, screwed up a lot. And
Mhm.
it's sad, it's angering, it's
Mhm.
infuriating, it's sorrowful, it's just like all of those things.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, how did it get this bad? How did it get
Mhm.
this bad? How did it get this far? um
Mhm.
I remember having this conversation with my mother, and immediately one of the mother's voice said, patriarchy was an answered prayer. And I saw a male, I don't want to say noble, because that's European term,
Mhm.
a male in a matriarchal society wanting his mother's power.
Mm.
And that helped to clarify the first vision I had when I began utilizing um, cannabis to journey. Like that
Mhm.
was the first vision I had, was of the mother giving birth, or the mother creating her creations, and one of them turning around to wanting to consume her power. And
Mm.
so that, patriarchy as an answered prayer emerged out of a disconnect, emerged out of
Mhm.
a son wanting his mother's power. And it's sad to become aware that it's a cycle.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, I get your power and being able to bring balance, but at the same time, it doesn't need to be a cycle. Like I don't
Right.
understand why it's a cycle. Like come on. Like why is this a cycle? But then that just goes to show that there are different iterations of it. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to even know what the other iterations are, you know,
Mhm.
because I think this is horrible. This is bad. So just trying to imagine what the other iterations were, it's a headache. It's a headache and a heartache.
Well, as you're sharing that image, to me, like my brain is exploding right now. I don't know if you can see it, but there's gray matter all over my keyboard. Um, it turns the original sin story upside down.
Mhm.
And then it says to me, oh, so really, Eve, as the source of original sin, was a projection of patriarchy's sin,
Mm.
saying, well, we're not going to take responsibility for the shit we got ourselves into. We're gonna make that woman responsible for it. And it just um yeah, I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole and go farther with that piece, but it just takes that story and flips it upside down and says, no, really, where what was the true original sin and where did it happen?
Right.
And I don't believe in the word sin anyway. I mean, to me, it's just, this is all human beings trying to figure out themselves. We're
Right.
all in this journey. And why is there a cycle? Because the power structure is not held accountable. It doesn't hold itself accountable because it's benefiting from that disparity of power. And until this goes back to, okay, yes, I heard that. The mothers were screaming at me. It goes back to, why do we keep repeating a dysfunctional cycle? Because we haven't healed the wounds that created that cycle in the first place.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I want to stress, I'm not placing the blame on men.
Right. Right.
It's there's an energy, right?
Right. It's
It's
an
called,
archetype.
right. It's
Yeah.
called patriarchy because somebody created that name,
Hmm.
first of all. But it did come from a desire to have power
Yes.
over. Okay.
And I think that's the key to understanding what one means when speaking of patriarchy and hierarchy. Is it is about power disparity. It's ultimately about possession of power.
Right.
And that's what will continue to get us in trouble.
And I mean, because there are women that embody
Oh
patriarchal
yeah.
energy. So
Yep.
just to be clear, for anyone that's listening, They say, oh, great. Now she's blaming men because there was a male child that was like, I want that power. No, it's unfortunate that that's how it became embodied. It's, if you understand, because there are plenty of origin stories, first and foremost, right? Go, I love James Webb telescope. I love it better than Hubble. James Webb is blowing theories out of the water. It's causing astrophysicists and cosmologists to really rethink their whole theories, which is awesome, because that's what research is supposed to make you do, right? Go take a look at one of their galaxy clusters. You're looking at billions of galaxies, trillions upon trillions of stars. So look at that as a reflection of belief systems. Just to clarify, I'm not blaming men, and the mothers never ever said men are to blame. They never said that.
Right.
They said one of their creations that wasn't given the gift of parthenogenesis turned around and wanted that. And I understand the cosmos and creations as this big consciousness wanting to experience itself. That's also what I was shown. So it's not a matter of it's your fault. No,
right.
This is an energy that wanted something that it wasn't given, and it wasn't given that so that that its creator, its creatrix, can experience itself. So in a sense, it's like, it's unfortunate that it's embodied in a humanoid form that cannot procreate within itself, right? But that can participate in procreation, right? I'm going to say that again. So it's embodied in a form that can participate in procreation, right? The male form, but cannot procreate parthenogenetically. That is the belief system that I come through. Autogenesis and parthenogenesis, okay? And that's not to say that women don't hold patriarchal energies, dominant energies, power over energies, because they do. So that's what I'm referring to. It's that energy of power over. And it's unfortunate that the first form was a male form. It's not to say that there aren't female forms that aren't like that, because there are plenty of female forms that are like that. So to be clear, any males or men or, trans men that are listening, I'm not saying that you're to blame. It's just according to not just my own origin story, but if you look at look at the Greek story, the Kronos swallowing his children, time swallowing life, time devouring life, right? And then Zeus being the one to win the lotto. That's a patriarchal energy. If you look at Carl Cariani's work of the research he did on, I think it was an archetype, a text. It's like all the way over there and I can't see that far. But he talks about how patriarchy came into the civilization where Hera was the mother goddess of that culture. And so that's that energy. The name is Zeus, right? But that's the energy that came in. Was there another option? Was there something was probably worse than what we have now? So that's also how you have to look at it. You have to look at the spiritual stories behind it, the spiritual energies behind it, because you can't have a material manifestation without its energetic blueprint. Right. So to be clear, I'm not bashing men or the male form. I am simply clarifying that there was a creation that wanted to turn on its creator, its creatrix, its source, and become the source instead of honoring the gifts that it was given.
And it's the same story.
Exactly. I'm like, and it's mirrored in society today.
Yeah.
Patriarchy, capitalism, colonialism, especially colonialism, not honoring their own intelligence, devaluing everyone else's, stealing everyone else's and claiming it as its
Mhm.
own and then devaluing. We see that manifested. So that's
Mhm.
the energy that I'm speaking to with regards to wanting to take on its own. It doesn't
Mhm.
know how to relate on equal footing,
Mm.
you know? It can participate in procreation. No, it wants to control it.
Mhm.
You know, it's not learning the lessons from its mother,
Mm.
from the mother. It's not learning its lesson at all. So it's
Mm.
kind of like, well, can you take it back and completely dissolve it? And it's like, really set up some protocols. That's my thinking, right? But yeah, that's that's what it is. That's where it is. So I think with the confusion around matriarchy, it's not women having power over, it's
Mhm.
coming back to source and understanding your gifts
Mhm.
and working through. And let's start with our relationship to the earth and the spirit realm and the
Mhm.
cosmos too, because
Mhm.
you look at the, meteorites and asteroids and all of that stuff, there is a communication there. It's like,
Mhm.
how well connected are you to the movement of the planet
Mhm.
to be able to know when such things are going to happen, when
Mhm.
we're going to get hit, and what do we need to do, how do we need to do it? That's why it's so important to have that type of openness with regards to past civilizations, because they did that,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
They speak about that, they've left clues around that. um I would say that, yeah, they were mostly matriarchal, egalitarian. you
Mhm.
know do I have whole, hard scholarship, academic, patriarchal academic proof about that? No. But is that necessary to be able to move forward? I don't think I need to prove that that was the case. I just feel that it's evident that what we're doing now isn't working.
Mhm.
And with this reemergence of the mother's divine feminine, still, it's like an oxymoron. It's like not divine feminine.
Right.
It's not opposite of anything. It's that mothering energy,
Mhm.
to talk
Mhm.
about the beginnings of birthing that
Mhm.
belonged to mothers. Fine, find a culture where you don't use the English word for mother, but if you break it down, the concept, it's the one who gives birth from the
Mhm.
beginning, um, nurturing, connected, really.
Mhm.
And that's the key thing, because as a mother, you're connected to that life.
Mhm.
You're nurturing that life. So to be able to do that within yourself and in the spaces around you, that's what we need to get back to.
Mhm.
And anybody can do that. Anybody can connect to themselves and connect to the spaces around them, right? You don't have to be a womb bearing humanoid being.
Mhm.
Um, but you do have to reconcile your relationship to the
Mhm.
mothers, right? Not just your mother. Even if your mother wasn't there or wasn't the greatest, she had a mother, and she and the mother
Mhm.
before her, and the mother before her. Start connecting to that. Start connecting to them. You don't sprout out of a lotus flower. You're here because of 300,000 people plus.
Mhm.
You're here because of all the mothers before you.
Mhm.
If you can't honor them, you can't move forward. You're going to have issues in your life. That's for everyone.
Mhm.
regardless of your gender orientation, how you look, how much melanin you have or don't have, if you cannot honor your mothers, you cannot move forward.
Mhm.
You cannot. Any reflections on that? I can go on and on.
Just the term that comes through is rejection of the mothers, the rejection of the mother is rejection of self.
Mm. Because you're not separate
Yeah,
for a while.
right.
You're not separate until they cut the cord.
And even then, we're not
Exactly.
separate from source.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a dream I had. Gosh, it's in my journals have like these different it's not year frames. So like it could be anywhere from 5 to 10 years in a journal. And so in this one in particular, I'm at the house I grew up in. So usually that's my beginnings, my informative years. And in the room that I was in with my siblings, before my youngest sister came along, my brother's bed was where it was. As soon as you open the door, like his little bed is there, and the bunk bed is right opposite up against the wall. And I could see the mother at the head of his bed.
Mhm.
And my brother's a small child in this dream, and she's taking out his hair. Like his hair was braided and she's unbraiding his hair. And I'm like, you're doing this again? And she's like, because she's undoing his hair so she can take him to the bath, bathe him, wash his hair, bring him back, help him make his bed, braid his hair, and then undo it all over again to show him how it's done. And she says he needs to understand how to do this. Like he needs to understand this process, this ritualistic process. Braiding one's hair is weaving of one's destiny. Who does that? Your mom. Right? Bathing. Really? Who does that? That renewal, bathing in the waters, very mothering, right? Making of your bed, like your life, your whole life, your deathbed, right? From the beginning to the end, that entire cycle, those rituals that women create that. We create culture. Like they give the opportunity for people to you know what I mean, to make the ritual and whatnot. So, and it was a cycle.
Yeah.
And so me in the dream, as the female child, it's like I already understood that because it's inherent. And it's mainly because of the concept of parthenogenesis, of the twinning aspect. Like I already embodied that, but he didn't have that. And so she was like, I have to teach him. When certain things are not inherent within a person, it has to be taught. As opposed to when it's inherent in a person, it's just they need the space for them to apply it. Right. And so, with regards to understanding, why men don't have wombs and why women have wombs, or why even you know what I mean? It's my understanding of that is through these stories that have been passed down to me. And so, yes, they need to be constantly shown and go through that whole rejuvenative process so that they can remain aligned, so that we can all remain aligned, because anybody can be disconnected. But if we're talking about earlier times, and we're talking about the archy, talking about the beginning, that is what helps us to remain connected. So when we don't have those stories of the beginning, that's when we have what we have today.
Yeah.
So I think it's not matriarchy in and of itself that's the answer. It's our reconnection to what matriarchy is in essence.
Yeah.
That is the solution, and how we apply that in a way that's inclusive without erasure or
Mhm.
silencing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did I sign up for this? I'm
Yeah.
asking.
I ask myself that every day.
Why exactly did I sign up for this?
Yeah. Whose idea was this? I
Yeah,
did not sign
exactly.
up for this.
Hey, whose bright idea was this anyway? It's all good.
Hmm.
It's all good. Well, any last reflections on this? Because I mean I could go on for hours.
I
I have
don't think
hours.
so. I don't think so. I think you summed it up really well right there at the end. It's saying ultimately it's not about terms and what we decide to call something. It's about connecting. It's about reconnecting to our origins, reconnecting to, our truest natures. And our truest nature is not division or separation. It's wholeness, it's unity, it's that collaborative, cooperative, reciprocal relationship. And that's what we've lost, is that true relationality. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
Well, with that, we'll end it there. We are close to time, and the garbage truck is coming. Uh, the bell, not the bell,
Yep.
not, it's the engine. Um, so I want to thank everyone for listening in. Thank you so much, Lauri, for participating.
Thank you
Our
for
next
inviting
and
me.
last of this series is the Hebrew goddess Waipatai. Oh, I'm really excited about that. Just hang on after I end this, because there's a detail I kind of want to share
Yep.
with you. But this will be up on YouTube and on Spotify. So thank you again for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.